Hi, Jackie.
Anybody else need their, do you need anything done to yours? Dated or anything?
Steve, can you hear us?
What's that?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, Jackie, the time is now 6:30. We're going to get started. Today's City Council workshop agenda for a meeting for Monday, August 2nd, 2021. And this meeting is being live streamed using a Zoom app. The council chambers of the Center Law and Justice Center is available for in-person attendees. For current directives, unvaccinated in-person attendees must wear a properly fitted mask and remain physically distant. Masks are available here. Please allow one person to speak at a time, and we'll call every member to make sure you have had an opportunity to ask questions. I will now ask the clerk to do a roll call, please.
Mayor Guerrero,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Borza,
Here.
Councilor Farmer,
Here.
Councilor Tucci,
Here.
Councilor Hicks,
Here.
Councilor Hart,
Here.
City Manager Casey,
Here.
City Clerk Garcia, I am here. Finance Director Alba, here. Fire Chief Anderson,
Excused?
Police Chief Escalera,
Here.
Public Works Director Fisher,
I'm here.
Planning Supervisor Shuttleworth.
Here. We're all here, so we'll start with our agenda, which first item is going to consist of the ARPA allocations. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we're going to have a workshop presentation related to the American Rescue Plan Act, the allocations. We're going to spend a little time just kind of going back over the various categories. There's, as council is aware, quite a bit of complex guidance from the federal government as to the various types of uses for the ARP funds, as well as some potential uses that staff have already provided in samples. And then we're continuing to just provide the opportunity for council to brainstorm with staff on potential projects, programs, proposals. It just is going to take a little while to figure out how best to apply these resources in the community. I will start with a bit of an overview. I'll then invite Director Alba to talk through her summary of the 39 pages of federal regulations, interim regulations that have been put together. We've summarized those for you in the presentation. And then I'll pick it back up and talk further about some of the sample ideas that we've come up with. Jackie, if you could go to the next slide, please. All right. Most of this is information that we've presented to council before in various formats, but just want to kind of provide them all together in one package this evening. As council is aware, the American Rescue Plan Act was passed by Congress earlier this year to provide a substantial infusion of cash, as well as substantive policy changes to try to mitigate the ongoing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Among its provisions, it included funds for cities like Sunnyside to address various impacts of the COVID pandemic on our services, to help us deal with any lost revenues, to potentially invest in water and sewer infrastructure or broadband infrastructure, a number of projects and activities like that. Jackie, if you'll go ahead into the next slide. So under the ARPA, Sunnyside was slated to receive a total of just over $4.6 million in 2 equal payments over the next 2 years. We then have until December of 2024, December of 24, to obligate those funds. In May, U.S. Treasury Department released, as we said, about 40 pages of guidance and regulations. That was quite a dense read of material. On the next couple of slides, starting below, this is information that Finance Director Alba put together to summarize the different categories, and I was going to invite her at this point to just kind of walk through each of those with you. Some are, as you know, tied to actually having public health services. Others are tied to responding to the economic impact. So let's go back to slide 3 and start with kind of the public health services potential uses, and I'll let Elizabeth kind of go at whatever level of detail seems appropriate. A lot, as she's pointed out, some of these, especially in this first category, don't directly relate to Sunnyside. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. As many of you know, responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, we did have a surge of money that came through last year, approximately $700,000. There were a few things that we wanted to get accomplished with that money and we didn't. So there are many categories here that we can actually try to finish some things that we started. And then the other thing that I want to let you know, March 13th was the date of record. So the kind of anything that we spent after March 13th, we can apply to this. So what my staff will be doing is looking at all of the invoices and things that we've purchased. One of the things that I know right off the top of my head, when I was ready to open the pool, I had copious amounts of things that we needed to purchase. And so I will be tying those directly to this money and obligating it for this year. And then come to you with real dollars and cents on a year-to-date basis. One other item that I would like to mention, it's my plan next week to replace the chairs here. These chairs are difficult to clean, they're very dirty. They are very hard to sanitize. And you'll see the black chairs on the very end, past Mike Shuttleworth. Those will be the audience chairs. We can accomplish changing all of those chairs out for $4,000. So that will be a very easy way for us to spend this money in little increments and then wait for big projects that you as a council say, okay, listen, you know, we've 50,000 ourselves to death now, and now we want to look at a big project or several big projects. The nice thing is we have time to do this. There's not, the decision doesn't need to be made tonight, but there is time to do it. So the first one is mitigation and prevention. And so the example that I wanted to use for you tonight is the chairs. Cloth chairs are very hard to clean, especially when you have public use. So having a hard plastic chair will make it easier, and it will be a facelift for our council chambers as well. These ones, if you've looked, are getting a little shabby. The purchase of PPE, we can also look at ventilation improvements for our jail. There are things that I'm sure this building could use upgrades on. It's 20 years old or older. So in that category, it is mitigation and prevention. So anything that we can do to stop the spread or to make it easier for us to wipe surfaces down, that is kind of where I'm looking at with those things. Medical expenses for us isn't something that we would really, invest in, but it is something that we may find at a later time we want to assist someone else with. The thing about this money, it seems like everyone you talk to has a little bit of this money, and they're all trying to be creative in ways to spend it. If you could go to the next slide, Jackie. Behavioral health care. So as many of us know, our mental health suffered from lack of human contact and not being able to see the people you normally see. This also can cover substance abuse, crisis intervention, overdose prevention, really a whole host of behavioral health care. Public health and safety, we can actually cover payroll and cover benefits for public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, and similar employees to extend that their services are devoted to mitigating or responding to the health emergency. We can identify clearly EMS calls that were for COVID and COVID related. Those calls can be covered under this for our payroll and our covered benefits. Expenses to improve design and execution of health and public health programs. So this is something that we would also be targeting consumer outreach to improve data or technology infrastructure, impact evaluations, and data analysis of anything that was a program addressing COVID-19. Very broad. A lot of stuff in there that you could, one of the caveats at the very beginning of this 39-page document, it says this list is not all-inclusive. So in other words, this isn't everything, but here's a little bit of what you can do. Eligible use to address disparity in public health outcomes. This one is for people that are basically not having enough benefits in their own health plan or benefits that they have access to get healthy living environments, again, mental and physical wellness. We could probably look at something recreation-wise, or even for our senior center, we could probably figure something out there with programming. Here's the one that I thought was really very neat, remediation of lead paint or other lead hazards. So we want to start a lead paint program, we can do that. And I don't know if we have a lot of lead paint left. There was some big marketing campaigns to get rid of that lead paint, so. It's also evidence-based community violence intervention programs. So like, you know, anything at Crisis House, we could assist them with their programming. So again, very broad. Next slide, Jackie. Assistance to unemployed workers, we can actually assist with job training or any other service to accelerate the rehiring of unemployed workers. So if we wanted to set up a program where we had some kind of job training, we could do that. The next one doesn't apply to city funds, that's the State Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. This is the one I really like, assistance to households. We can do food assistance, rent assistance, mortgage, or utility assistance. I'm very interested in the utility assistance one. That money goes right back into the city funds, into our water department. And it would assist people at a low income level. So we would make the program so that you actually, if you qualify, you could get some assistance. And we want to bring that program back to you actually at the August, is it the 23rd or 26th, the second meeting? 23rd. So Delilah is assisting me with the program right now. We're researching what other cities are doing. We want to be ready to go so that before the utility moratorium ends, September 30th, people have the opportunity to apply for this and not potentially get their water shut off if they did not have the means to pay their bill during the pandemic. We can actually give counseling and legal aid to prevent eviction or homelessness. We can give cash assistance, and it doesn't say what kind of cash assistance, it just says cash assistance. So I'm not sure what that means, but we can also give emergency assistance for burials, home repairs, weatherization or other needs. We can give internet access or digital literacy assistance, and then again, job training. So very broad category, a lot of things that we can help the people that live in Sunnyside with this money. So it's just a matter of finding that category and, you know, finding a program, something that we can put together that will meet the needs here. Expenses to improve the efficacy of economic relief programs. So this is basically being more efficient to say this was a negative impact and how are we going to use the data to understand what we need to do to reach out to our citizens. This is kind of a piece where we could hire a consulting firm. They could come in and say, well, most households have this device or this device, and this is where they're getting their information. So that would basically be a way for us to say, okay, now we have these programs, we have utility assistance, we have rent assistance, whatever it is we decide, and now we could actually have a company come in and help us get this out to the people that say, okay, now you're out there, let's figure it out, and they can assist with that. Small business and nonprofits, this one was very helpful last year when we did it. So these would be loans or grants to mitigate financial hardship. So again, payroll, mortgage, rent, utilities, other operating costs. Loans, grants, or in-kind assistance to implement COVID-19 prevention. Technical assistance, counseling, or other services to assist with business planning needs. With the lack of a Chamber of Commerce here, we really don't have that other leg of, usually in the city, you have the chamber, you have the city, and then usually other service groups that is kind of our method of getting information out to businesses and people in the community. We could use some kind of service to help businesses do plans and come up with these things for us.
Director Alba?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, just wanted to call something to the clerk's attention. Mayor Guerrero's image froze up and then dropped off. I don't know if you're experiencing a technical difficulty from the dais.
My Zoom application basically crashed, it says, so I'm gonna try to reconnect in a second.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for the, sorry about the interruption. Thank you, Director.
So F is rehiring state, local, and tribal government staff. The one thing that I want to say, we were very lucky that we did not have to lay anyone off. We spent the entire time at full staffing levels. We did move a few people around. I'm not sure if anyone recalls, but our recreation coordinator was mowing lawns, and that was purposeful because we wanted him to be able to keep his job. So we wouldn't have anybody that we needed to rehire. We kept everybody on. Next slide, please. 8, to impacted industries. So this is the one that also I think is something that we should take a hard look at. We can provide aid to support safe reopening of businesses in the tourism, travel, and hospitality industries and to business districts that were closed during COVID-19 public health emergency, as well as aid for planned expansion or upgrade of tourism, travel, and hospitality facilities delayed due to the pandemic. Now, we talked a little bit about this the last time. This means if you already had the plans in the works and then it was delayed, then we could assist economically with it. But since our planned upgrade is just an idea right now for our convention center, we wouldn't be able to apply that to this. But we could maybe find something else that was in the works that was delayed and assist with that. Building stronger communities through investments in housing and neighborhoods. So services to address homelessness, such as supportive housing and to improve access to stable, affordable housing among unhoused individuals. Affordable housing development to increase the supply of affordable and high-quality living units. Housing vouchers, residential counseling, or housing navigation. This is one that is near and dear to my heart. I have someone in my family that I found out was homeless. Didn't realize that that was the case, and didn't want to tell anyone. And that's pretty rough. I wouldn't want to see that in anyone's family. So I think we need to start somewhere. I don't know if I can navigate that. But I do know there are people out there that are experts in this area. I would like to be able to them, so where do you start? What is it? Do we need to do, counseling and housing navigation? Are there resources out there that we already have that are available? We just don't know what they are. So I think that if we could get a conversation going about, homelessness and try to find a way for people to navigate the system that's probably already there. We just maybe don't have all the information. Addressing educational disparities, new expanded or enhanced early learning services, providing assistance to high poverty school districts, evidence-based educational services and practices to address the academic needs of students, evidence-based practices to address social, emotional, and mental health needs of students. So again, here is a category that is very broad. I will be reaching out to the school district to ask them if they received aid. I do believe they did. They would have all of these things, very close things that they would need to do. I don't want to double up on that. I want this money to be in as many people's hands in our community as possible. And if they're already doing programs, then I think we should let them run with their programs and be supportive, but find ways to do that. Promoting healthy childhood environment. So this is all about high quality childcare, providing safe and supportive care for children, home visiting programs, structured visits with health, parent educators, social services, pregnant women. And again, this probably is going to be something that the school district will be looking at, Inspire, any of the other different programs, and I'm sure they all received some money. I mean, it was very broad in how this went out. And next slide, please. And this is the last one, so hip hip hooray. Premium pay, so staff at nursing homes, hospitals, and care settings, workers at farms, food production facilities, grocery stores, and restaurants. We can actually offer subsidies. Janitors and sanitation workers, public health and safety staff, child care workers, educators, and other school staff, social service, and human services staff. So I will be going back and making sure that any of our staff, if we have things that we can backfill to March, I will. If we wanted to create a premium pay, I think it would be troublesome with as many union contracts as we have. I do think that this is something that, you know, if we're grasping at straws and they're going to take the money back, then let's figure it out. But I think, you know, we can find a lot of different ways to do this. So revenue loss, this is the one that I thought I would have all this revenue loss, and we actually didn't have any revenue loss according to every worksheet I've done. We came out farther ahead than we have been. And that is really due to the fact that 17, 18, and 19 were not the best years for us. We were in a declining financial condition. We brought that back and brought it back in 19 and 20, the years that are really the comparison years. So I'm glad for us. It doesn't make it as easy because you can't just spend it on something that you want to now. But there are communities that did not have our good fortune. And then the last one, investments in infrastructure. So water and sewer infrastructure projects that would be eligible to receive financial assistance through the EPA, CWSRF, or DWSRF. So if it was eligible to be funded, not necessarily was funded or has a grant and saying this, we have to read the eligibility requirements to see what could be funded. And if it is eligible under those 3 different programs, then we can use the money for this water and sewer project. Broadband infrastructure to focus on locations that are unserved or underserved, having less than 25 megabytes download and 3 megabytes upload speed, which is not too great. I know the school district has been trying to get, is it a satellite on the water source? Yeah, satellite on the water source so they can serve more of the children on the hill. And maybe we could assist with that infrastructure for them, you know, paying for the lift. And we do know that we would need to add some more locations. Our new water tower is already full. So that would be another infrastructure that we could pay for with this. And I think it would be a better serving our community and get what we need out there. And so that is all I have on this big, long topic.
Very good. No, thank you for that, because we wanted to kind of both illustrate for council the depth and breadth of activity and hopefully provide a little inspiration for your own brainstorming, because as you listen to those various opportunities and options, there are quite a few that might be suitable or that we might partner. As Director Arbel mentioned just a moment ago, there's a couple of opportunities with local social services. There may be opportunities with our Sunnyside School District to partner on projects that they may be getting funding for, but there might be a city component too. So a lot of opportunity for brainstorming and hopefully for inspiration on that. The next slide is essentially just there for council deliberation, for some reflection. As you think about some of these areas of potential spending, potential uses of this funding, it can be a little difficult to try to winnow it down and figure out, well, what might be the most impactful, or where would I want to start. We found this information out there that suggests, some factors that council members may want to consider in coming up with spending ideas. Staff are continuing also to brainstorm and develop thoughts around this, and we'll continue to partner with you as you go forward. Jackie, let's go on to the next slide. So, as we've shared with council previously, we have brainstormed a few potential programs or activities that we're confident would meet the criteria set up under the ARPA, and that would address, known, relatively well understood needs in the local community. This is obviously not intended to be an exhaustive list or the end of the list, but it's a place to begin. Director Arbel already mentioned one category that we do feel a little sense of urgency around is if council wishes to program some of the money towards utility assistance grants. We have some good data that back up that there is a need in our community for this kind of assistance. We know that many residents faced economic loss of jobs, or cutback of hours, reduction in hours as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, that many households that were having difficulty keeping up with the bills, many of them did fall behind in making their utility payments. As of last month, about 500 households and businesses were past due in our city for bills valued at more than $300,000. Now, we know we still need to kind of marry these up with the eligibility requirements, that folks will need to show that hardship is due to COVID, but there's a hard deadline coming up because the current utility shutoff moratorium is scheduled to end on September 30th. And so starting in mid-October, Sunnyside residents will be subject to having their water shut off if they haven't made a commitment, a plan, a progress towards getting caught up on their utility, water and sewer utility bills. And so our thought was, this is a good example of the kind of assistance that the ARPA is intended to help with. These are circumstances that, these weren't people who just didn't want to pay or just chose to ignore their obligations. They simply, the pandemic just, made it impossible for them to, in many cases, keep up with their bills, both from some of our households and businesses. So we've outlined kind of a rough proposal there. If council is interested in that, that's something that finance team can work up in more detail and bring back to council for action, either on the 9th or 23rd of August. But our hope is to see if council is interested in taking action on this item this month, so that we can be ready in September, do the outreach, the education, and get all that in place. So that's the first one. I could pause there if there's questions on that, or just kind of go through the others fairly quickly. We aren't looking for decisions tonight. Just kind of want to, get these ideas out there for you to consider.
Council, are there any questions on this part of the presentation, or even Elizabeth's session?
Mayor, I'm really thinking as far as the suggestion of moving ahead with utility assistance grants. I think it's going to be top priority for us. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking into the mic, but I kind of believe that if we can move ahead with that one, at least get some direction in that way. I think that's something we really must do.
Council, additional questions or comments?
I have a comment. I certainly think that this money can be put to some very good use. My concern is whenever there's free money, everybody gets in line. And I don't think that maybe some of the people that are getting in line need it, deserve it. And I hate to say it that way, but I will. I know when I go shopping, I know what we put in our cart, and I know what other people put in their cart. And they're putting steaks, I'm putting hamburger. And they go out and they load it into an Escalade. We have to have some kind of system that we can truthfully and honestly dole this money out, so we don't give it to people who are undeserving. There's a lot of people who have been hurt very strongly and very badly in this community, and I think we as a city, if we have the money, we should help them. But there's a lot of people that are going to get in line that don't need it and should not receive it.
If I may, when we're structuring the program, we're looking at 125% of the poverty level for Yakima County. That's where they would have to meet that threshold. They would have to provide documentation showing their income or loss of income. So we would expect them to bring us their information and hold them to that. We would set those guidelines, and that's what we would bring forward to you, so that you would understand that you can get in line all you want, but if you don't qualify, you won't be receiving the assistance. So it will be a very much income-based qualified program.
And just for council's background, also for comparison purposes, in contrast to the roughly 500 households that are behind now, typically in pre-COVID times, we had fewer than 75 to 100 that were periodically past due. So Council Farmer is absolutely right. There is a portion of this group that probably had the means, but for whatever reasons has not paid. But there's also been clearly a change, an increase since COVID in the number of individuals who've fallen behind. And so, as Director Alba indicated, there will be the team would put in place clear criteria and eligibility to ensure that it is based on need as a result of COVID.
I do have a couple more comments, and I may be premature in them also, but I think I know the answer to this one, but we had a lot of overtime. I know in our police department and other departments due to COVID. Will that money be able to be replaced back and to help cover the overtime funds that we laid out?
After March 13th, I will be looking at all payroll records, and if I can tie it to COVID, then yes, it will be a part of that and be reimbursed.
And also, if I might also add to that, we also submitted for reimbursement in real time last year under the CARES Act for certain overtime related expenses. So we'll also be scrutinizing those records to make sure that we aren't, because some of those expenses may have already been reimbursed through the CARES Act.
And then the last two things, is there any way that maybe we could work with the port in some investment into the city of Sunnyside to help bring businesses in through this program? And also, is there any money we can spend out on the Munson property to make that more available for, more attractive for people to come to also?
All of those things are well within the scope of this process, allocation of this money. The last I had heard from Shane was that the water sewer improvements was about $10 million, is that correct? Yep. So this would put a little tiny dent if we did water and sewer, get us about halfway there, but we'd spend all the money on that. So I'm not sure if that would be something that we would want to invest in that direction. Maybe we look at extending it only part way. Maybe we, become, like I said, we've got 4 years to try to figure this out. As long as we have a plan in place by December 31st, 2024, we still have 2 years to build it out. So if we want to keep it and keep saving money and find a way to do that, if we want to go out for a municipal bond, there's a lot of ways to finance that. We just have to decide if that's our priority.
Mr. Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, the form that you guys sent us, those are where we write down those ideas, kind of farmers bringing up, and submit those to you guys for obviously review and consideration for us, the final decision makers.
Yeah.
So, okay, I do have a couple myself, and obviously, because Ron has a few of his own, so we'll put them all together, and we can all review them, and obviously, there's some that overlap, and maybe we put more weight on some of those items.
I think my plan would be to do the green dot, red dot. That was very helpful with you the last time, so we could prioritize, put the projects all in alphabetical order, and then, each person get however many number of each color, and then do that exercise. It was I thought, very successful for you. And honestly, it was great guidance for me when I was ready to do the budget amendment. Very easy for me to get that in my basically software.
So, Barbara, additional comments?
I think that's all for right now.
All right. Councilors, anyone else? Question, comments so far on this presentation? All right, so that's not like we're ready to proceed. Please go right ahead.
All right. So the remainder of this slide and the next one just provides council a couple of more examples of potential uses of the funds. We know that our tourism and hospitality sector, our hotels and restaurants were hit hard by COVID. So while there were some small business assistance programs last year that were helpful, as well as there's other business assistance even in the ARPA Act. Some jurisdictions are choosing to program a little of their money, targeting it to their tourism sector to help it recover more rapidly and get back on its feet. So that's a possible area of spending. Another area of concern, and we've seen this with ransomware and other types of cyber security attacks on critical infrastructure around the country and around the world. One idea that we kicked around is that we program some of the money specifically to developing an RFP for technical support related to cybersecurity to assess our various software and systems that run our critical water and sewer treatment plants, and then recommend either if they have that capability or recommend, as a follow-up, the acquisition and integration installation of appropriate cybersecurity measures to harden our assets against these kinds of cyber threats. And so that's just another example. As Director Abel mentioned a moment ago, some of these individually are relatively small dents in the 4 million. that the city will be getting, but they would be difficult to fund otherwise in some cases, or we would have to seek grant or other kinds of funding. So being able to use this money in those ways could help us move these forward very quickly. The last slide I had, slide 10, this was in response to, at one point, an earlier estimate that we were hopeful that we might have some lost revenues to recover. But as the analysis has shown, we actually were fortunate in so far as having stronger revenues, and so this may not be, frankly, an option for the city, but there may be other programs or other activities within the scope of the American Rescue Plan Act where we could be able to fund some of these activities and these investments. So we'll keep working on that. And finally, slide 10, or excuse me, slide 11. This is just kind of going up to, forecasting some potential next steps. We know council members have expressed an interest in being able to kind of spend some time one-on-one with staff to brainstorm ideas, to help flesh out details. That was, again, part of the intent tonight, was to just kind of hear and talk through all the different ways that these funds could be potentially used in the hopes of inspiring your thinking. We want to make that invitation, that invitation stands to come in, meet with staff, meet with Elizabeth, meet with Shane or whomever around possible ideas that you have, or just to brainstorm together and come up with proposals, and then have some further discussion probably around the 23rd, see what's been generated at that point. And then further conversation at your September 7th workshop, and possibly make the first kind of big tranche allocation, some significant decisions by mid-September. The one exception to that, based on the conversation tonight, is that we do anticipate trying to queue up the proposal related to utility assistance and the rules around that, getting that one in place and brought back to council for consideration during August, so that we'll be able to work on the implementation and execution of it in September and October. And that's basically our presentation for this topic tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Casey and Ms. Ricaralba. Council members, now the presentation is over on the RPA allocations. Do you have additional questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
I have a couple of comments. So, number one, along with Councilor Hart, I am 100% in favor of the help with the utility assistance grants. I think, part of our job is to serve this community, and we've got a number of people who have really struggled with being able to make those utility payments. As Mr. Farmer indicated, that we're going to have to screen those pretty carefully. I have no doubt about that, but I do think that we owe that kind of assistance to members of this community who are truly suffering, and I have zero problem with that. The other things that were brought up, Mr. Farmer brought up infrastructure, and I know there's a number of areas in town where the water and sewer is exactly adequate for the development and for nothing more. I once heard a story, and I can't verify it if it's true or not, but on Merrick Avenue, it is exactly sufficient for that street and the street below. We've got that really nice field that when Merrick was put in, it was an orchard, and now it's just a great big empty field that would look really great with some decent houses on it, but yet we don't have water and sewer infrastructure that's strong enough to handle it. I may be wrong on that, but if we've got neighborhoods like that, I'd like to see that kind of growth and maybe, a little bit of a push towards the Munson property to see if we can make some work on that. You were showing replace lost revenues at 2.2 million. Some of that could go to that kind of work if we don't know what else to do with it. But I think we do need to invest in things that will help the community now and long-term. And that's why I like infrastructure. Long-term help 25, 30 years down the road, and we'll still be glad that we did it, and something that we need to look forward to.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions on this presentation?
I think Mr. Stucci.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Stucci, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. So I would agree with my colleagues. I definitely like the idea of us looking at the long hanging fruit. The water issue is definitely something that's going to reach us very quickly. So it's something that I think council should take action on quickly. I'm a big supporter of cybersecurity solutions, Mr. Mayor. And, if we're not doing, red hat type work right now and doing penetration testing and things of that nature, we need to be doing those things because it's not a scenario where it's, if we get hacked, it's when we get hacked, Mr. Mayor. So that's my concern more than anything else there. And then I agree infrastructure with the deputy mayor. I agree infrastructure is definitely something we can look at. I've said more times than I can count that we need to be planting trees we'll never sit under. I truly believe that. That's our job as a council member. So if we can have a get together where we talk about, future plans like we've done in the past, I think that would be really good. And I would support something like that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Oh, well, and to thank the Finance and Admin Services Director and the City Manager for putting this together. I appreciate the work that you've done.
Mr. Mayor,
You're done?
unless,
No, please, please good to go, or, okay,
That's pretty much hit everything I wanted to say.
right, Council Mark, you got the floor?
well, I think that the three that we've pretty much nailed in on tonight, just in our general conversation, I think those are the primary things as Mr. Councilman Stucci said in regards to the trees we won't sit under. Infrastructure is one of those trees. We have to always build for expansion, and which direction we're going to go in expansion is also an important part of our look as part of our planning for the city. So working in conjunction with the commission and with what we already know that we need is, as we know, some of the streets where there's orchards and were orchards and now it's dust bowls. We certainly need to be looking at that. And I agree with the Munson property. I think we need to be more actively finding ways to at least reach out in that direction, whatever that looks like. I know that originally some of the water that went out there was just as far as the school district, and we didn't make that big enough to go any further than that. That's again, and I think that that's where we've kind of had penny pinched a little bit as a community, and I think that we need to think beyond that. So I think those are important parts. So I pretty much ditto with the other fellows here tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, everyone, and obviously those are obviously extremely valid comments, and I have a few items that obviously I'll be jotting down, but just the one has been brought up today, small business. Obviously, there's a lot of small business in town that have had some significant reduction in revenues this past couple of years, so that might be something we have to consider as well. I know it's be part of the overall package that we can do some assistance for them. And also, I agree with Councilor Stucci, cybersecurity. Myself working in finance and banking, we're constantly being tested in a sense from within our own institution just to make sure that we're not eventually being victims of cybersecurity or a hack or some sort of attack. So I extremely agree with Councilor Stucci and City Manager Case as far as having that testing or that assessment done to make sure that we have a strong water and sewer system in place, water and sewer technological equipment in place to make sure that we're not vulnerable to those cyber attacks. And there's a lot of items. I know in the past talked about equipment purchase because some of our old equipment that our streets and water and sewer departments use. So there's a way for us to get some of those extremely old items that need to be replaced, and there's a way for us to do it in this program, and obviously I'll be in support of that item as well. I'm not sure that's possible. I know there's a way for us to get into the general fund, but not a whole lot of funds. Not all of it, I guess, at once, but there's a way. Again, I don't want us just to focus on one specific part, but if we can spread it throughout the whole community with the whole different departments, I would definitely be wholeheartedly in support of that. So police department, streets, and everyone that can benefit from this in a way that is equally, equitable, I would be in support of that as well. Again, we right now is down. I like back to Elizabeth's idea for the green dot, I think it was extremely helpful for us to narrow our thought that instead of putting a green dot on everything, we have so many, we could, try to focus our efforts, and that way it's a lot easier for us to narrow down what's, of interest to council, and easier for, obviously our staff to be able to budget and put it in place instead of being all over the board. So that's a great idea. That's all I have as far as comments. Again, I really appreciate everyone's thoughts and ideas on this. I think it's going to be a good starting point, and a good utility assistance, especially if being pretty close to the moratorium being, called off in a sense. We need to kind of get on it pretty quickly. So hopefully, we can all agree. And I'm not sure if it's a poverty level that we're looking at or what it is, but obviously, again, I agree that we have to make sure we give the funds to people who deserve it and need it, instead of, myself, I don't need it. So anybody else who would definitely need that for sure. Any additional questions or comments on this ARPA allocations presentation?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Ms. Alba made a comment about homelessness and, the possibility of looking into doing something about that. I did have an opportunity today as I was pumping gas to observe some of our homeless population. And, they're camping out in spaces behind buildings and in alleyways in different areas. And, yeah, we do, this time of year, I suppose they can live fairly well outside. I don't know where they go in the wintertime. I've seen some tents. I know in Yakima they've had a camp set up for them, a place where they can go. But I do always have some concern about those individuals, where they go in the wintertime. And so, we have had some controversy over the last year and a half over a couple of homeless encampments, and it might not be a bad idea for us to be a little proactive on that. I don't know, it's not something that we can just sit here tonight and say, hey, this is what we should do, because as was mentioned, we should actually talk to people who know some things about this. Not necessarily my world, so I can't give a lot of suggestions, but I know people who know stuff about it, so that.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, just real quickly, Mr. Deputy Mayor, just so you know, the Yakima Valley Conference of Governments is actively involved with the county on homeless. If you want to learn about the programs that we're working with right now, I'll be happy to sit down with you and go over those so you can get an idea of how that's supposed to happen. See, in 2017, every city in the council, or every city in the valley and the county signed a document authorizing the YVCOG to be the homeless program coordinator. So the organization, we're responsible for that. But unfortunately, when Mr. Leda left, he took the program back to the county. So we're still in discussions with the county as to how that's going to play out. But every city in the valley signed a resolution saying that they wanted the COG to administer the homeless program in Yakima County. So it's going to be a situation where we have a sit down with the county commissioners and determine exactly what's going to happen. But right now, according to that document, every city in the valley wants the COG to handle their homeless program. So that's what we've been working on. And I've been tasked to write a letter to Senators Murray and Cantwell, as well as Congressman Newhouse, to ask for additional assistance in those programs, as well as housing start programs, rehab programs, and other things like that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is going to consist of a 2022 budget. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to turn this one actually over very quickly to the Finance Director, because this is the schedule that she and Finance Supervisor Delilah Sines put together for your budget development calendar for preparing 2022. A little hard to believe that we're already talking about 2022. But this is the schedule you can anticipate of major activities. And with that, I'll let Elizabeth walk you through it.
And this is a document that you'll be very familiar with. This has been something that you've received for quite some time now, updated with new dates. Last Friday was my official call to budget, so I sent the email that says, okay, everyone, get started. I have the charter account started in what used to be spring, or by now called Springbrook, so I'm trying to say Springbrook. We'll see how well I do. So really the one thing that I would like to talk to you about tonight is some form of budget retreat. We've had them in the past, where we spend a day with department heads and council and try to navigate those big topics. And I think it would be an opportunity for us to look at the ARPA topics then as well. So I've asked Jackie to poll the council to see if there's some dates that you're available. But I do think that it's important for us to try to have a budget workshop so that we can address the things that are, on the table. There is going to be a lot of opportunities for, this money to be spent. And I think it would be good for it to be a part of our 2022 budget. So estimates will be filed by September 15th, and we should have stuff pretty much ready for council by the October 4th workshop. This will be budget presentations. And like I said, this is all something that you're very familiar with. These dates are ones that haven't really changed. We just go in and look to see what calendar date works for us. So this is all the way through the end of the year. We have not missed our budget deadline in many years, so I know this will be the same this year. But just wanted to give you the calendar so you can start putting dates on your own calendars. Jackie, please go to the next document. Delilah put this together, which I thought was excellent for us. This gives you everything all on one page with a little calendar so you can start to see, oh, okay, this is what is planned, this is what needs to happen. This is not only for, council, it's for staff. You'll notice that there are notices that are highlighted yellow so that we don't forget that those are our notice deadlines. So this gives you a one-page overview of the coming, basically, coming up. So I put August 21st or 28th for budget workshop number 1 planning retreat. I'm not sure if we can get there. We're already on August 2nd, kind of short notice, but if we could try one of those dates, I think it would be great. Like I said, Clerk Rodriguez, she'll send out a polling for you to know which date works, and we'll go on from there.
Now which day works?
Well,
28.
Mr. Casey, any additional items, any additional comments on this budget? All right, council members, questions or comments on the city budget schedule for 2022? Hearing none, we'll go on to our next agenda item, which is going to be fireworks ordinance background. Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This item is on the agenda in response to the discussion at council here a couple weeks ago regarding noise complaints and enforcement activities related to 4th of July fireworks in the city. As council is aware, this is an area that is governed by state law as well as local code. And so Police Chief Escalera put together a memo, which we distributed electronically to council today. Jackie, I don't know if you had a chance to provide copies to everybody there tonight, or if all of council has seen it. Do you have copies there in the room?
No, it was only email.
Okay. Jackie, is it possible for you to put the memo up on the screen?
Yes, working on that now.
Okay. While she's doing that, and then I'll turn it over to Chief Escalera to kind of talk through the memo. I'll mention the other 3 documents that we provided you in background. One is kind of a almost identical conversation that occurred in the city of Lacey right after the 4th of July with their public safety subcommittee and their police chief related to the challenges in enforcing their fireworks ban, which was enacted by the voters many years ago, and which highlights very succinctly the issues and the legal requirements and the other priorities that that police are contending with in any given evening. We also provided a copy of an MRSC blog post that summarizes the legal framework that governs how fireworks bans may be enacted or modified. State law is very specific and prescriptive about how councils can do that. And then lastly, we provided you a copy of the current City of Sunnyside Municipal Code for background and reference. But the heart of the conversation for tonight, and I wanted to compliment Chief Escalera, he did a very nice job in putting together a summary of the City of Sunnyside Police Department's experience with enforcing the code, but also the other activities that were demanding police attention on the 4th of July, and how that fits into the how the enforcement mechanisms fit into the legal framework that we have to adhere to. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the chief to kind of walk through his memo, and then we'll respond to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Casey, and good evening, everyone. As Mr. Casey just said, that the memo does kind of put down a little bit of history, and with some of the folks that I had a privilege to talk to, were some were community members and some were employees and things, and folks that have been here for quite some time. And, their recollection is obviously their point of view and how things may have went back in 1993. However, the gist of what they were talking about is the reasons that they felt that they were imposed, and didn't have really an idea as to how difficult it would be to contain fireworks. And this kind of outlines what the city has done to the city's approach to minimizing or basically banning the use or sale or manufacture of fireworks, not only from folks that are set up to do that, but also from our citizens themselves. And it also poses the challenges, and the enforcement challenges that the Sunnyside Police Department has faced over the years is not it's not unique. It's not unique to any community, whether they're small or large. They do face considerable issues, especially when it comes to proving culpability. And culpability is very difficult in court under these kinds of matters. And obviously we have rules that we have to follow when we're making an attempt to enforce these laws. And so in the memo it does discuss that, and some of the unfortunate incidents that occur along with the celebration are a major part of really what takes up our time. And in this case, we had several incidents that did exactly that. And we were able to seize multiple weapons off the street, and they were relatively large in caliber. And it took us some considerable time in order to mitigate. So not only that, but we also had other calls of service that encompassed other violent or other calls that were violent in nature, also impaired drivers, all of the things, unfortunately, that are associated with the event. So I think that overall, we had responded to 68 law enforcement related events in a 30-hour period. And in that 30-hour period, 31 of those were directly related to firework complaints. And, the attempts to prove that is very, very strict. It's very hard for us to prove not only location of detonation, but who actually lit it. And that's really what the courts look for is who is the individual who lit the firework to begin with, whether they're juvenile, adults, and if you have multiple people standing around a particular area that an officer didn't actually see detonation, and if nobody is willing to discuss or provide a name or point somebody out, you're pretty much you're pretty much ineffective there. You're not able to render enforcement, and so there are other things that make things difficult for us, and that is plumes of light. When people actually hear the fireworks, they assume it's coming from next door. Some of those are so loud that they could be 3-4 doors down. It could be a block away and or further. And same with the lighting. When there's plumes of light that are fireworks displays, we've had people insist that it was a particular residence. We contact the residents both front and back, and to find that plume of light comes from perhaps 4 or 5 houses down. And so those are a lot of the barriers and enforcement challenges, and they just continue, and they just don't really change that much. But unfortunately, we do have other calls that actually take place. It doesn't stop just for the event, and it adds additional workload to the responding officers that are there at the scene. When we call, we have contemplated calling additional people out, but the difficulty of culpability just outweighs paying somebody double time during that particular holiday to come out and attempt to take enforcement. So oftentimes, police officers will just get out of cars, they'll knock on doors, they'll try to do those types of things in order to at least show people that we're searching, we are looking, we are in the area, in order to calm some areas down. But at the end of the day, really the thing that we're watching for, obviously, is unfortunately major violent calls and fires. And so, the fire department is also tasked in the same light that their major concern are structure fires and major grass fires that can go, in a moment's notice. And if the weather is not participating and we have a wind, that's obviously a major concern. So I put together a memo for you to read, to take a look at that. It does show some year-to-date statistics and how problematic it can be and how it does increase our workload on that particular weekend. It does, there's good and bad to it. And I think that when most communities, I think they strive to do what they can in order to minimize the use of fireworks from inexperienced people, and they put on large pyrotechnic displays and hopes that would draw the majority of the crowd, when in fact when you fly over a particular city on 4th of July, it's quite a display out there. And because it's not isolated to the major events that are hosted by cities and or counties, in fact, it's just everywhere. And so the answer for us, again, it's going to be quite difficult. I think that the increasing the code enforcement and planning and hiring an additional code enforcement officer is going to be good. I think that's a great thing to do, but again, it's going to take more than a couple people in order to put a dent in what it is that we're looking at and what we're trying to do here. So what I think overall, I think at the end of the day, we did quite well, and I think the city fared very well for the holiday season, or for the 4th of July season. And I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Chief, for that explanation. The memo, it does give us a lot of information as far as calls and everything that was done around from the beginning to the point on now. So we'll go ahead and go and ask any questions on this firework ordinance background. Questions for the chief or city manager, council members?
Just a question for the chief, if I may. So I noticed that the RCW lists very, very strict dates when the fireworks may be sold and used. But I noticed that this year that just continues to go on and on and on and on. We're hearing fireworks at our house constantly. Last week after our council meeting, I had to go out of town. I was coming back into town on the Sunnyside Madison Highway, and I was watching a beautiful display of fireworks north of Sunnyside as I drove up the road. Is this year's, does it seem to be like there's more fireworks going off throughout this month of July, or do I just not remember?
You know, I don't know that it would be any more than what we normally have. I think that I got to tell you, people spend not hundreds of dollars, but thousands of dollars on this particular day, and for fireworks. And so I think for you to see what you are seeing, there's no question that you're seeing these major displays throughout the city, especially in the elevations that you have coming down from Sunnyside or the Sunnyside Madison Highway. I think that's pretty normal. I think it's pretty normal for what you see going on throughout the fireworks season, and we're going to continue to hear those probably for another 2 or 3 weeks, probably off and on, and then it tends to die off until the Christmas and New Year holiday hit again.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things, you know, as having been the chairman of the local sanctioned fireworks display, I do believe that this year and even last year, there were more home fireworks going off than in previous years. When we've had the public display, we've had thousands and thousands of cars parked around the area, plus those people who come inside the stadium to watch the fireworks from those locations. But I do believe, because of the pandemic, because of everybody being stuck in their houses, and this year they were able to be out and mingling a little bit during the 4th of July area, I do believe that's part of the reason, because even I noticed, and I'm really keen on that, that there were more firecrackers, you know, the illegal types, going off around our community than I'd ever seen before, and that's going 20 years of being, you know, setting up the public fireworks displays. So I do think this year was more difficult, and more difficult for staff, you know, the officers to get around to, because they were like on every other block, front yards, backyards, deserted alleys. I mean, they were everywhere. I mean, even at the Senior Citizen Center, I started yelling at people because they were shooting fireworks off on the senior citizens who were sitting there. So yeah, but I do think that there were a lot more this year. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think that we could deputize half the town and still not stop it. But it's saying that there are other communities that allow some fireworks. Zilla, you had to buy a permit, and then that way people would know who had the permit to use fireworks and who did not. I think if we're going to have, an ordinance or a law, we need to enforce it. And if we can't enforce it, then we need to, for lack of a better word, and I hate to say this, dummy it down to where we can live with it. I had a ton of complaints with fireworks, the noise and inconsiderate people that were blasting them away. And like I said, I don't think we can hire enough police officers to do it, but I think maybe if we look at some of the other communities and see what they're doing and how they're doing it, we might be able to restructure ours to where it'll be a little more effective.
I'm in agreement with both. Mr. Farmer here. I drive from Toppenish every night. I get off at 11 at night. And up till last night when I came home, there were still fireworks going off. Like Mr. Farmer was saying, other towns do allow permit. People can set them off. If we set it strict on there, by your permit, you have from this time to this time. Anything after that would be a violation. I think we could work it in and still be safe and still give people the freedoms to celebrate the 4th. I do like the sanctioned setup. There's times I don't want to be in a group.
Councilors, additional questions or comments on this item? Sounds like there's a little bit of an appetite for at least considering some permitting of fireworks. So we'll get that added to our future agenda items to be able to consider that as possible action. See what else we have. Sounds like some communities around us are allowing some sort of fireworks lighting on specific times of the year. So you could somewhat model their permitting process or ordinance they have for us to consider. I think that'll be a way for us to try to hopefully, as Council Farmer kind of said, try to get it to be within the lines of the law and instead of just being outside the law and hoping that they're going to take it. It'll be interesting to see how that's going to work, but I am all for looking at it and see what that might look like. So, Council members, anyone else? All right, sounds like we'll see what we can come up with, and if you could get it down on our agenda down in the future, that would be very helpful. All right, Council, our next agenda item is going to be upcoming council meeting, Mr. City Manager.
All right. Jackie's making some edits to it at the oh, there we go. All right, we'll bring that up on screen for everyone. Thank you. So August 9th is filling up admirably with quite a busy agenda. So you'll see a number of items there. We have a brief executive session. Mr. Mayor was able, I believe, to contact Mr. Beeler, who indicated he would be in town or available on August 9th if council wishes to move forward with the discussion and possible action that they had begun entertaining for filling the District 1 council seat. So we probably should clarify that the agenda item will be discussion and possible action. The council subcommittee is working with Director Alba on an interim city manager agreement and hopefully have that ready to bring back for action that evening. We are working, actually, we have a meeting tomorrow with WCIA, at which I want to get feedback from them regarding the changes to the Department of Natural Resources wildfire interlocal agreement. They've changed liability and indemnification provisions. Just want to, we've run it through the city attorney, but we also want to run it through the insurance, since that's really who it may have more of an effect. So that may or may not remain on the agenda for next week, depending on what we hear back from them tomorrow. Public Works has a few projects that we're moving forward with design or development phases. Need council action on those to get those moving. And then Clerk Andrea is working with Deputy Mayor Broersma on an LTAC meeting. We're trying to get back to council a recommendation related to the Veterans Memorial. There was we need to get a kind of a process step completed to make sure they can get reimbursed appropriately. So we have that coming forward. And then later in August, we have discussion and possible action. This is an update to the strategy related to police vehicle replacement. We had been looking at a leasing strategy. Further analysis with finance has indicated that a more cost-effective approach may be to borrow in order to make a purchase given current interest rates. So we want to bring that discussion for council on August 23rd. And then the FSAC, the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council. It's a state board that is involved in the siting of energy facilities. It has a provision that authorizes the appointment of a local jurisdiction's legislative authority, from its local legislative authority of a voting member for the purposes of consideration of projects in that jurisdiction. And given that we have started to see further movement towards potential development of the solar project on the Monson site, that'll be eventually coming before FSAC, and so it'll be timely to have council consider having a voting member on that body when the time comes for those deliberations. So that's some of what we've got coming up for a very busy August for you.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. And looking at the interim city manager agreement, our committee hasn't quite decided what day to meet.
Okay.
When are we available as councilors? And I did put it in my notes, it was Councilor Farmer and was it Deputy Mayor? Yep. When might you guys be available to try to narrow down a date to meet and try to hash out some of those ideas we have for interim city manager?
Any evening would be fine.
Evenings are gonna work better for me this week.
Wednesday, sounds okay?
That'd be fine.
Wednesday evening?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so, next time for Wednesday evening, what's the time for you, Councilor Farmer? 6 o'clock, 5 p.m.?
6 o'clock, 5:30, I don't care, just whatever.
Six works.
6 p.m. this Wednesday?
Where? Or in person?
I'm okay with either one.
Pardon?
In person or through Zoom?
I want to do it in person.
Is there anything open in the city at that time that we can utilize?
Yeah, we could utilize the fire department, the community center, or probably even City Hall. I have keys to the community center, and then I could make it available at the fire department that evening in one of the bigger rooms.
I think the fire department, there's gonna be people there, that way we just leave and take a lock up if there's anything. Fire department, so.
That's fine with me.
I'll let the battalion chief know that you'll be there Wednesday at 6.
Thank you. And Mr. Chris, is this the last meeting you're gonna be in?
I will be at the August 9th meeting.
Okay, perfect, I was asking. Okay, so there being no further business coming for council, and without objection, I adjourn this meeting at 7:51 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Good night.
Next, Monday.